Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday, Bayou Blitz family. Happy Victory Wednesday on a short week. I hope everybody is doing very, very well out there this evening. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your exhausted hosts to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Joining me from home base is my, I think, equally exhausted co-host, Brendan Boylan. Brendan, happy Wednesday.
Yeah, you too. I'm not as bad as you. I mean, you're the one who had to drive today, right? Long time no see. It's
Right?
not like I didn't just see you like 24 hours ago, but nonetheless, listen, we got fun football to talk about in terms of winning. Some unfun things to talk about in terms of injuries and suspensions, and maybe some concerns to talk about.
Yeah.
Despite starting the season 2-0. So lots of good things to chat about. Did want to thank you again for hanging out while you were in Charlotte, you and your wife, Lauren. If you guys want to see our beautiful faces even more, it's plastered on social media now. Which after all these years might have been the first photo we've ever taken together.
Yeah. The other times we've seen each other, we just chatted, didn't think about selfies or pictures or anything.
Yeah, that's what happens. Honestly, you throw two guys with football knowledge together, and you don't get much outside of just talking football. So let's talk about some football. Let's start with it. The New Orleans Saints go to I guess it's not my hometown, but my current residence, Charlotte, North Carolina, and they come away with a victory on Monday Night Football. The score a little bit closer than what the game said it was, especially with Carolina scoring late in the ball game when the Saints were playing prevent defense. Final score 20-17 in that one. So the Saints go almost 8 entire quarters without surrendering a touchdown. Derek Carr did not throw a touchdown pass in this game. The Saints relied heavily on Tony Jones Jr., who was elevated from the practice squad for that game as Jamal Williams goes down during that game. And final note before we go into the breakdown, the Saints are the only team in the NFL to have 3 receivers in the top 35 in terms of yards so far, which may be a shocker considering that they have not scored more than 21 points in a game this year. I digress, and let's kind of dive into it, right? So when we talked throughout the week, whether it was here, whether it was on PSF last week, we talked about the importance for the Carolina Panthers to run the football consistently and run it strong against the New Orleans Saints and their strong front seven. For the most part, I feel like the Saints did a fairly good job of containing the run.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, their main rusher, Miles Sanders, only had 43 yards on 14 carries. The Panthers as a team had 100 yards, but that's a bit skewed by the fact that the quarterback, Bryce Young, had 34 yards of his own on 2 carries, where he did a great job of eluding open field tackles. That's another issue in and of itself. But the Saints held the Panthers running backs to just 66 yards. So mission accomplished. Big check mark in that box. They forced it, just as we speculated they would have to do. They forced Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers passing game to try to beat them, and predictably, they weren't able to do it. Young had only 153 yards in the game and only 78 yards through the air before that final drive, where the Saints were kind of playing off coverage, and letting plays develop in front of them. So this victory, no doubt, was again on the shoulders of the defense. But we thought that the Saints would have a big advantage against the Panthers' passing attack. Not only the ability to pressure Bryce Young, which they did so in a big way, but also clamping down on the Panthers receivers and wideouts Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, and Jonathan Mingo. They had a combined 95 yards between the 3 of them. So again, mission accomplished. But that started with, like you said, the Saints' ability to shut down the running game and make sure that the Panthers had no balance whatsoever.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take it a step further. There were some drops by Mingo, like big drops by Mingo. Adam Thielen's always been a thorn in the side of the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
And while he was a guy at certain moments in that game, you could see Bryce Young specifically looking for him. I don't think that Thielen did enough, and clearly didn't, since the score ended up being the way that it was. I don't think Thielen really had the impact on the game they were hoping. And the other thing, in watching the game back and listening to the broadcast, I couldn't tell you how many times that the ESPN trio of commentators wanted to see the Panthers take a shot to DJ Chark. And while in theory that all sounds well, and yes, while that should have been a part of the game plan, the one thing you need to be able to throw the deep ball, Bob, is time. And the Saints did an excellent job of not allowing Bryce Young time. So I want to dive in on that just a little bit as well. We talked about him last week. He's going to be the first name out of my mouth this week when we talk about the defense. That's Carl Granderson, who we highlighted throughout the week last week as a guy who needed to step up and was given an opportunity to step up because of the injury to Peyton Turner. Man, that was a guy, and I'll give credit again where credit's due. I think I said the same thing last week. All of us saw this kid develop in camp over the years, but it was Kyle T. Mosley that continued to tell us that this kid's going to be really good. This kid's going to be really good. This kid's going to be really good. And we all saw, he's a physical specimen. He's a big dude. He's an athletic guy. And we were just kind of waiting for all the pieces to come together. And we saw some of that last year, towards the back end of last season, and it looks like he's even grown and making another leap because he was dynamic in that game against Carolina. Cameron Jordan, didn't register a sack, but was in on everything. Was disruptive, was drawing double teams, everything you want from him. And ironically, I remember a podcast earlier this year that we did where we talked about how are we forecasting Cameron Jordan at this point in his career? And I had made a comment that I don't think he's going to get to double-digit sacks this year. Or I don't think he's going to get close to, 7 or 8 that he's had in however many straight seasons. I said, I don't know if he'll get there. And that's not a discredit to his talent. That is a credit to his talent because he's going to draw these double teams. And because there's not a proven other guy on that defensive line, he's going to draw all the attention. And that's what he did. He drew all the attention, but still impacted the game, and that's what you want. Inside, I felt so bad for Brian Bresee not getting awarded with that strip sack because of a holding penalty that was like 30 yards away from the play. It's football. It happens. But that would have been a great way to cap off the game because that's another guy that didn't stuff the stat sheet, but Bresee impacted the game positively throughout. And I think it's fitting too. If I'm not mistaken, it is within the same week anniversary of his sister's passing. And coming back to the Carolinas where he starred, in college. I know it was South Carolina, but the Carolinas in general, where he started in college, to come out and have that type of game. I thought it would have been a beautiful way to cap it off. It doesn't happen, but still got to tip my cap. He had an outstanding outing against the Carolina Panthers. And as well, the other 2 defensive tackles the Saints brought in this offseason, I thought everybody played their role really well. And what's made the Saints so good over the years is that rotation, and that you don't have any clones of each other. Everybody does something a little bit differently. Everybody has a little bit different a skill set where you throw all the ingredients in the pot and you stir it up. You realize you have a really, really good front seven, and that's what made the Saints special over the years. And I think this was a perfect game to highlight what's made the Saints special and what makes this defense special, particularly this year. Bob, what were your thoughts on the defensive line as a whole?
I thought the defensive line played outstanding, all night long, from the first whistle, to the final gun. If I was forced to give the player of the game away to one player, and I cheated in my game ball segment and I gave it to the entire defense, but if you forced me to give it to one player, I'd have to give it to Granderson, just narrowly over Cam Jordan, because as you said, Cam should have had could have had 3 sacks by my view, where he either got a hand on Bryce Young. And Bryce is a terrific athlete, by the way, where he either got a hand on Bryce Young and Bryce was able to spin away from him, or he was the first to flush Young from the pocket. But you mentioned Granderson. Nathan Shepard, I thought, played exceptionally well along with Brisset. Roach and Colin Saunders did a better job against the run than they did the pass. But all those guys, even Isaiah Foskey had a pressure or two, in a situational role. So all those guys are coming up big. And I know what you said before or earlier this offseason, Brendan, about Cam getting double teams, maybe going to affect his sack totals. If Granderson and those defensive tackles continue to play as well as they have been, Cam might actually see some one-on-one opportunities going forward. And if there's one thing that we know about Cam Jordan, it's that his sacks come in bunches anyway. He could be due for one of those games where he has 2 or 3 sacks, a strip fumble and like 8 or 9 pressures. We know he still has it in him. But fortunately, for both him and the New Orleans Saints, he doesn't have to do it alone, because Granderson is playing so well at the other edge, and those defensive tackles. We highlighted that position all off season about being a position to watch because the Saints did bring 3 new names in there. And so far, albeit it's after only 2 weeks, 2 games of play, but those players are showing exactly why the Saints coveted them so highly. And I just you can't help but love this defensive line right now.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the secondary, Marshawn Lattimore specifically. When the numbers came back, when he was the closest primary defender, Lattimore's given up less than 10 yards a game this season.
Mm-hmm.
He played extremely well. Alontae Taylor, there was a lot of concerns with him playing in the slot. There's been some moments this year where Alontae Taylor has shown that there rightfully are some concerns with him playing in the slot, but he played particularly well against Carolina, and so did Paulson Adebo. I mean, you threw the stats out there, Bob, just a little bit ago, that prior to that drive where the Panthers go score late in the game, the Saints are playing prevent defense. And what do they say about playing prevent defense? Prevent defense prevents you from winning the game, right? So nonetheless, as a whole, the Saints hold Bryce Young to 76 yards, I think is what you said, or something somewhere in that range. Yeah, the defensive line's going to get credit, but man, and you probably had a great view with where you were sitting, just being able to see the lack of separation that those receivers were getting. And you're not talking about some just bum, wide receivers in the NFL. Adam Thielen, former Pro Bowler. I mean, you want to talk about vet. That's won multiple playoff games, a guy that's been to the Pro Bowl, a guy that has been the thorn of the side to a ton of NFC teams. You talk about a guy like Mingo, a day 2 draft pick who they expect to do big things. You talk about a guy like DJ Chark, who, for a couple years there in Jacksonville, had some of the Jags fans just drooling at the mouth at what potential he had with his size and his speed. And the Saints secondary didn't give him an inch of room throughout majority of that ball game.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, a lot of people, and rightfully so, are giving credit to Lattimore, who might be playing his best football. Alontae Taylor, Paulson Adebo, and all 3 of those corners are playing extremely well. But let's give some credit out to the New Orleans safeties too. Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May, who sadly we'll get into in a minute. But when and Mingo did get freed up a couple of times on either Adebo or Alontae Taylor on Monday night, but he was only freed up for a minute because May or Matthew were just so quick to give over the top help that Bryce Young really didn't even have a window of opportunity. If his pass pocket was clean, and that's the the Saints pressure sure as heck doing that secondary a favor by getting quick pressure. But in turn, a couple of the Saints sacks and pressures have also come because the New Orleans secondary is just playing so aggressive and so is such crisp football. And like I said, when a receiver does have a momentarily gets open, from the cornerback coverage, May and Matthew are just on them right off the top. And we already saw May get one interception in week 1. I'm waiting for Matthew, for Tyrann Mathieu to make a couple of plays because a quarterback thinks his receiver is open, and those safeties are just showing outstanding range and anticipation.
With all of that, let's go ahead and talk about it. We can jump rope a little bit between
it's our show, our rules.
Yeah, exactly. Jerry just threw in here. I thought time slot was 10:05. I have to apologize for that. My computer, for whatever reason, has yet to adjust to the fact that I'm back on the East Coast.
Weird.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just an Apple thing or if I have to restart my computer again, but even right now, it has me in Mountain Time. Not even Central Time, Mountain Time. So I got to adjust that. So I'm sure when I set the stream up and I put it at whatever time I thought it was going to be on the East Coast, it just didn't translate well. So that's on me, Jerry. My bad. So guys who are filing in late, that one's on me. I guess we're both a little tired, Bob, because I didn't notice that. But
no, I don't know. I don't know, Brendan. When I post my links, I do every single week. I do 9 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. Central, because I know a lot of y'all are obviously in the Central Time Zone or the Gulf Coast region. Because of our family member D, commented in the Who Dat Domination group. She goes, post all the times, Bob. So I'm like, okay, so from now on, I'm going to do 9 p.m. Eastern time, 8 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Mountain, and 6 p.m. Pacific. Folks, I refuse to do Hawaiian time. I'm not going to do European time. I'm not that bright, so I'll let you guys
figure out UK time.
Because I am not that bright.
I'm not either. I couldn't even tell you what time it is over there right now, or even in the remote ballpark. I just know when the Saints have played in the UK over the years, there are some really early pregame shows. Yeah. That's all I remember. But let's talk about Marcus May while we're just talking about the secondary. So let's go ahead and break the news to people that don't already know. Bob and I have speculated for a couple months now that because of a DUI arrest to Marcus May, he was going to be getting suspended. Well, he got suspended, but not for that. Marcus May gets a 3-game suspension for something along the lines of performance-enhancing drugs. And it's disappointing because we were already anticipating a suspension. So, of course, while I see from our very own John Hendricks at Saints News, when I see that come across, I go, oh, okay. Has to be for the DUI. No, not till I could read into it a little bit further did I realize, this has nothing to do with the DUI arrest. That's not good. So, Bob, this is a guy who we joked last year, never played in back-to-back games because of injuries. A guy who did not live up to expectations last year. Has been better through 2 games this year. His own defense. Much better. So how disappointing is it for a guy who ultimately has been playing pretty good ball for a defense that you could argue is the best in the league right now, especially in terms of a defense that's only given up 1 touchdown so far, to get a suspension like this?
Brendan, is very disappointing. And because I thought, in fact, I felt very strongly that May was playing his best football since donning the New Orleans Saints uniform. Really, he'd been playing his best football since his first 2 years as an NFL player with the New York Jets. And I love Marcus May coming out of Florida. I love Marcus May as a player. May has gotten himself, as you all know, if you follow our articles. May has gotten himself into trouble off the field a few times now. Most of those transgressions occurred before he became a New Orleans Saint, but even last year, there was a road rage incident that was dropped in the courts. But the fact that it occurred and he found himself in that situation, along with the other transgress, there was not only the DUI that we all know about, but there were two other incidents, excuse me, during his, I think, 4 years with the Jets. It's enough to make you question that young man's judgment. And now this, as you said, Brendan, you and I have been prepared, for Marcus May to probably get suspended over his DUI. Now, I'm hoping that the league doesn't tack on a suspension on top of this when he comes back from that. That was the shocker for me, was that this suspension was not the DUI related to the DUI, was that it was a separate transgression. Things are starting to pile up off the field for Marcus May, and they may seem like minor incidents, to an average person. But think of it this way. An average person, if you were to get busted for drugs, if you were to get arrested for a DUI and found guilty, if that happens a couple times to you, what's going to happen to you as an individual? I would rather not paint that ugly picture, but it is indeed not pretty. So let's hope that the league doesn't tack on an extra suspension, onto this. But there's no doubt his presence will be missed, during this 3-game suspension, where they're facing the Packers, the Patriots, and the Buccaneers. I believe the order goes. And because we just got done talking about how well this secondary has been playing, how much of a critical factor it has been to being 2-0 in the first place. May is a big part of that performance. So it's going to have to be next man up for either Jordan Howden, Lonnie Johnson, or I suspect Jonathan Abram getting promoted from the practice squad. Probably a combination of the three. Are any of the three the same caliber as Marcus May? We don't know about Howden, but according to what we saw from Lonnie Johnson and Jonathan Abram earlier in their careers, absolutely not. Is that how big a hole is that going to leave in the New Orleans secondary for these next few weeks? That's got to be a big concern going forward.
Integrity issues are always a tough thing to tackle. Especially when you're talking about younger players through the draft process. And shoot, you've seen the Saints draft guys over the years that have had quote unquote integrity issues. Mm-hmm. Another one from Florida sticks out, in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who, love or hate how it ended. Heck of a ball player.
Yeah.
But you can certainly see some of the integrity issues even now.
Oh, wait a minute. I got a question. To have integrity issues, don't you got to have integrity?
Leave it to Bob Rose to throw that in, because I don't even know how to respond to that. I was also going to say a guy like PJ Williams, who had some DUI arrests, if I believe correctly, coming out of Florida State.
Yeah.
Some guys take your chances on those guys. And obviously the Saints did it again with Marcus May in free agency. And the hardest thing to justify is, again, when you know there's a looming suspension already and you get hit with something else. And I've played this game before with you, Bob. We've very well played the devil's advocate game with, I didn't know that this was banned or this or that. But at the end of the day, there are no excuses when you can literally go to a doctor in your facility and go, hey, I got prescribed this. Is this good? Should I fill the prescription or no? Or what have you. So it is disappointing because he was playing really good football. And you might sit there and go, Brendan, Bob, it's just a 3-game suspension. Yeah, but you have, like Bob alluded to, you have games in these next 3 games that a win or a loss could really make or break your playoff chances down the road. Mm-hmm. And it is what it is. It is what it is. Let's talk about another player who's going to be missing some time for the New Orleans Saints. I do want to throw this up. Answer to your integrity. Integrity is based off of development, and character, and healthy environment. No excuse. The Saints have a nurturing environment. Let's talk about Jamal Williams. Out for separate reasons. He gets hurt. Hamstring injury officially for Jamal Williams. That was another one that was disappointing. Like, for all the different reasons. Now, Jamal hadn't had the best start to his Saints career, but at the same time, he was literally the only running back on the roster. With Kamara's suspension, Kendre Miller not being able to play the first 2 games, and he struggled. The Saints bring up Tony Jones Jr. from the practice squad. Today he was officially signed to the active roster. That should come to no surprise to anybody, because again, there's no running backs. But Williams goes down in what was that, the second quarter of the ball game, and it wasn't an on the field type of thing. It was, he gets checked out in the medical tent after ball switches hands, and then he limps his way out to the locker room, and you're thinking, that's not good. What's going on? And that was it. That was it for him for the game. And again, diagnosed as a hamstring injury. Now, Tony Jones, who is actually our featured player on our thumbnail tonight, I felt like we had to give him some love. First 2 career touchdowns. And I mean, remember, this is a guy who, 2 years ago, had a really good preseason for New Orleans, had a really good week 1 against Green Bay, got hurt, and then was later, released. For Jamal Williams, a guy that you and I both felt was a surprise signing by the Saints when it happened. A bigger name running back than we thought that would have came in. I guess, one, how do you assess the first 6 quarters, I guess, of his New Orleans career? And 2, in all actuality, how big of a blow is this to a New Orleans team that, between injuries and suspensions, can't really keep running backs, at least on the active roster?
Okay. First of all, integrity is an individual characteristic. So nurturing environment or not, sir, the integrity is up to the individual. So there's that. Nextly, when it comes to Jamal Williams, assessing his first 6 quarters is difficult because he was brought in to be a complement to Alvin Kamara. Kamara is obviously not there. Now, we know that Williams has shown himself to be a capable number 1 back, but he simply hasn't gotten the blocking from the offensive line. Certainly not against Tennessee for those first 4 quarters. I saw a better offensive line performance, at least in terms of run blocking, against the Carolina Panthers. And it looked like Williams was getting himself revved up a little bit. As you know, and as we've talked about with hamstrings when it comes to especially the quote unquote skill positions, the speed positions, running back, wide receiver, even tight end, and certainly the defensive backfield. That's a tricky injury, because you want to be more cautious with that than maybe you would another type of injury, because you re-aggravate that thing, you're talking a 10 or 12 week absence. So we'll probably see Jamal. We probably won't see Jamal Williams for, I'm going to say, at least 2 to 3 weeks here. We've seen this thing play out with Kendre Miller, who's, by the way, scheduled to come back as a full go this week, from his own hamstring that has hampered him for the last 3 or 4 weeks. So, it's a disappointing blow for Jamal, but as long as they're going to be cautious with it going forward, I still foresee him being a valuable member of the New Orleans backfield, when he comes back close to midseason and certainly down the stretch. But it's going to be a big hole to fill, because not only is he a quality runner, but he was already the main guy in a shorthanded backfield, without Kamara. And as we know, Kamara is serving 1 more game in this suspension. Again, just like we talked about with Marcus May at the safety position, it's next man up. So Kendre Miller is going to be expected to fill a big role, as is Tony Jones, in week 3 against Green Bay.
I think the most disappointing part through it all is no injuries avoidable, right? At all. But the fact that Kendre Miller was a guy that we felt was going to at least play week 2, maybe taking some of the load off. Maybe that helps prevent. I think that's the disappointing part. The other disappointing part is how much of the offseason do we talk about the opportunities that were going to be there for certain players because of the suspension to Kamara. We're like, wow, Jamal Williams is going to be able to really gel nicely into a new role. Kendre Miller is going to be able to come on board and really be like an experimental piece. He gets to be the lab rat. The Saints get to line him up a whole bunch of different ways and find where he's comfortable. Well, that's not the case now. You're literally being thrown to the fire, which can also be a good thing for a guy like Kendre Miller, for a guy like Tony Jones. But now it's you don't have the same luxuries that you once did. And to that point, that goes back to Bob and I's conversation about receivers for the last however many weeks. You're one tweaked ankle away, one soft tissue injury away from having to rely on guys that you really don't want to rely on in big spots. And I'm not saying the Saints don't want to rely on Tony Jones, because he's proven multiple times throughout his multiple tenures in New Orleans that he's a quality, capable back. I'm not saying the Saints don't want to rely on Kendre Miller, but he's a guy who's had multiple injuries and he's a rookie. And what's the one thing we know about rookies? It takes time. Look at Bryce Young. You want a perfect example of rookies take time. Quarterback's a different position by all means, but it's going to take time for guys to adjust, perform, this, that, and the other. The Jamal Williams injury is disappointing because the Saints now lose the luxuries that they once had for Pete Carmichael to have a full deck of cards and be able to shuffle them how he wants. Now he's playing without the King of Hearts, and he's playing without the Ace of Spades, and it's not the same. I do think it gives a lot of opportunities. I obviously think the biggest hurdle is week 3. You get Alvin Kamara back after that. Kamara is going to take a lot of the load, which if you're a fantasy owner for Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams' injury should be bad news to you, not good news. I hate to break that to you guys. But he's going to get majority of the carries again. And you're going to see a little bit less of Tony Jones. You're going to see a little bit less of Kendre Miller. Week 3. Week 3, expect another heavy dose of Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
In all honesty, because he even improved in week 2. He was a difference maker. You look at the stat sheet, you don't think he's a difference maker. You watch the film, and he's absolutely a difference maker.
Throw out the stat. I know you want to throw out the stat.
Oh yeah, I know. My favorite stat. This is going to be one that goes like years beyond what this needs to go on to. And I might have to look at his career, not just last season and this year, but I might have to really dig into the rabbit hole for you Reddit people out there. I might really have to go on a Reddit rabbit hole for all this. But going back to last season, the Saints are undefeated when Taysom Hill touches the ball 9 times. How many times he touched the ball in week 2, Bob?
Yeah, 9 rushes for 75 yards, 1 reception, and 1 passing attempt.
So there you go. We don't count passing attempts in that record, but nonetheless, right there, that's 10. See what happens when Taysom Hill's involved in the offense. That's all I'm going to say. That's what I expect.
There's other running back issues here too. As far as the personnel goes, and I had a conversation with someone about this on social media earlier, and I agreed with their point. He said, and I quote, "I didn't realize how good a blocker Tony Jones is." And I said, that's why this team loves him, is his ability to pick up the blitz, and you talk to any NFL coach, and they will echo this. The major thing that rookie running backs struggle with, during their transition into the NFL is blocking and blitz pickup. That's why guys like Alvin Kamara didn't see the field much until week 3 or 4, even in his rookie year either. So that's why, even if Kendre Miller is healthy, folks, don't expect he is going to get the bulk of the bulk of the opportunities. Expect the Saints to be very situational in the way that they use their backs, including Taysom Hill. If it's an obvious passing situation, you think to yourself, okay, well, Kendre Miller has shown himself to be a pretty damn good receiver, which is true. But how comfortable are the coaches and Derek Carr going to be in his ability to pick up the blitz, or his ability to identify the free rusher and get over there and pick him up before Carr gets killed? That's something that Tony Jones Jr. has the ability to do. And the fact that we did not see a New Orleans running back even targeted with a pass attempt on Monday night, I think is a very telling statistic going into week 3 as well.
The one thing that I will say, though, to that point is that I felt like Tony Jones actually did a really good job in pass protection when he was called on. Which, to your point, your running backs typically not that very good at that. And you look historically for the Saints, and you go, well, who's one of the best guys in that situation that's no longer on the team, right? And you go, Mark Ingram. Mark Ingram was so good in that spot. But going again back to your point, Bob. Look at Mark Ingram's first, 2 or 3 years in the league. Even as a bigger, bulkier dude, was not great in pass protection, was not great in blitz pickup. It's something that he grew into. The fact that it's there for Tony Jones, you don't want to rely on it all the time because he's gonna miss things.
Sure.
Right? He doesn't have that many NFL snaps, that many NFL games under his belt. It's nice to have that. But again, to your point is, how many times are we going to see a guy like Adam Prentice line up in the backfield out of the shotgun because you just need it there? But what does that do then? Well, it's essentially just being in an empty set, because you know that all Prentice is there to do is to be an extra blocker. Mm-hmm. How many times are you going to see Taysom Hill right next to Derek Carr having to pick up blitz protection opposed to using him in a way that's going to be effective offensively? Not saying that him being a pass protector is not, that's a good thing too, because he's got the capability of doing that. But wouldn't you much rather be getting the ball in his hands somehow than just being like, all right, Taysom, I just need you back there? That is a big concern moving forward. And to your point, even with the addition of Alvin Kamara back to the team in week 4, well, that's not Kamara's strong suit either. So you really don't have a guy there that is suited well to do that play in and play out.
Now, at least Kamara and probably even Kendre Miller, is definitely more so than Tony Jones, and probably even more so than Jamal Williams. Kendre Miller is going to provide a legitimate pass receiving threat that the Packers coverage is going to have to address. So that takes at least one defender out of the equation. When you're running guys like Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Rashid Shaheed, and those tight ends into the secondary too. So like I said, it's going to be very interesting to see how Pete Carmichael utilizes his backfield against Green Bay.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the offense a little bit before we jump into the Green Bay game. Remember, guys, we'll tell you this again, the Bayou Blitz on Wednesdays, we're going to spend a little bit more time recapping. So where our PSF streams on Fridays, we're going to spend a little bit more time previewing the game. So if you want your fair mix of both, you're going to have to hang out with us twice in a week. For some of you, that's asking a lot. Some of you like to hang out with us. Some of you can barely stand one day. You're going to have to get 2. I'm sorry. But we'll take the last about 10 minutes to preview Green Bay. But I do want to talk about the offense. Obviously not the biggest talking point, because let's face it, the numbers look okay. Passing the ball, especially week 1, Derek Carr throws for 300 yards and a touchdown, right? The first half against Carolina, very forgettable. Rushing the football, we've already talked about the issues there. We don't need to dive any further into that. But then again, you look at the numbers and you go, okay, well, Thomas, Olave, Rashid Shaheed, all top 35 in receiving yards. The Saints were the only team in the league to have that. So what's the issue, right? Let's face it, Monday night, and this goes for both sides. Some of it was the defense playing extremely well. The other side of it was the offenses just could not capitalize on their red zone opportunities, which for New Orleans is a little weird because you look at the offense and, I say this a lot, but it's not like playing Madden, but you look at it and you go, well, shoot, you got Mike Thomas, who's a big body receiver. You got Juwan Johnson. You got Jimmy Graham. Foster Moreau's a capable guy. Olave is one of the best route runners in football. Shaheed, you can get really creative with. Jamal Williams led the league in rushing touchdowns last year. Like, what's going on? Why can't the Saints score touchdowns? This is ridiculous. I think there are some very obvious reasons for that we'll get into here in a second. But to the average fan or the fan that doesn't dive into the analytics or watch film back, like Bob and I do for, our jobs, you might see this and be really concerned. Trust me, I have my concerns about this offense through 2 weeks. I'm sure you do too. But I'm not as concerned about the Saints not putting up numbers as some of the other people. Bob, I'll let you take the stage first.
No, Brendan, I'm not as concerned either with the numbers. Because I'm seeing a lot of potential out of the stars that we identified coming into the year, and I'm seeing some progress out of the areas that we were concerned about coming into the year. The major concern was and continues to be for me the offensive line. The line. As we mentioned a moment ago, the offensive line, I thought, got some better traction for the running game. Still struggled a lot in pass protection. And everybody, myself included, pointed the first finger at left tackle Trevor Penning last week. I thought Penning played a lot better against Carolina. He got some help over there too. The areas that I was concerned about were Cesar Ruiz in pass protection, for Cesar Ruiz, and my God, Ryan Ramczyk. He looked like somebody fitted him with cement shoes at the beginning of the game because he could not move, did not move laterally. Carolina pass rushers were just pouring in on that side all night long. And again, just like with Penning the week before, it wasn't all Ryan Ramczyk. It rarely is with offensive linemen. It's usually an entire unit. And it was with New Orleans. James Hurst had his struggles. Eric McCoy. When the guard on either side of the center is struggling, then that's going to make the center look bad, whether he's playing well or not. I've seen Eric McCoy play better than what he has been, but it's difficult again when you have free rushers pouring in on both shoulders. Unless you are literally Superman, you can only take one guy out. McCoy needs to do a better job, but that entire interior needs to do a better job. Ramczyk, I'm not worried about him long term. I hopefully that was just an off night for him. And like I said, I'm seeing improvements with Penning. So we know, I still feel like this offensive line, once they gel and once they develop some cohesion, that they're going to be at least a serviceable unit going forward. But yeah, my number one struggle for this offense starts with the line.
I think for me, when you look at it, obviously the offensive line has not been as good as we expected, as good as we had hoped. You're having to see guys, and you highlighted Penning in week 1, and I do think he played a lot better in week 2 as well. But when you have to start throwing tight ends over to Chip, when you have to start really focusing your game plan there, it does hinder what you're able to do. Now in week 2, and I'll give credit where credit's due. The Panthers have Justin Houston, who's one of the elite veteran pass rushers in football, right? And you have Brian Burns, who is holding out or was holding out, and he's going to get paid, whether it's by the Panthers or somebody else, because he's one of the best young pass rushers in football. But my problem was it wasn't just those two guys. And yes, those two guys take attention away from the interior of the line to try to help, the outside of the line. But Cesar Ruiz looked like the Cesar Ruiz that we were busting on in the early stages of his career. And James Hurst, who we've spoke so highly of over the last few years, didn't look very good either. Derek Carr did a pretty good job of getting the ball out quickly when he could. But in all honesty, I think Carr's one of the last people to blame. There was a couple balls, right? There's a handful that were not good. One that really sticks out to me, it was like a comeback route for Olave, I believe. And it was like a second and a half. He threw it a second and a half early. Maybe not even a second and a half. It might have been less than that. But that's a pass that you're used to seeing from a guy like Drew to Mike Thomas, where it's just money every time. And Mike Thomas probably caught 20 of those on his 100 and, 49 reception season. So I think in a way, Saints fans are still hindered by how good you had it for like 15 years. But the offensive line wasn't helping them out there. The lack of a run game, which also goes to the offensive line a little bit, also goes to the fact that you're banged up severely. That doesn't help either. I think when I look at the Saints offense as a whole, I don't have issues with them moving the football because I think they've moved the football extremely well. I think my issues come with red zone, and yeah, I highlighted the offensive line, but hear me out. I think some of it's play calling as well. And I think Carmichael has done a much better job in 2 games this year than he did all of last year. Because I was on that boat of there is no way Carmichael should have made it through last season. In his defense, he had a lot of different quarterbacks. But you get down to the red zone, and what have we not seen? And again, it's really easy for me to sit in my office chair in my office of my home and say all of this when I'm not on the field making these calls, right? But I haven't seen a fade to Jimmy Graham. I know a lot of Saints fans are like, Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Graham's not the same Jimmy Graham that he was. Like I get it. We all get it. Bob and I have told you guys that for however many weeks now. But what if Bob and I also both said is, well, we expect him to get goal line opportunities because he's 6'7". Dude's a power forward. I'm going to trust that guy to jump over like a 5'11" corner, or like even CJ Henderson, who I think is a little bit on the taller side for Carolina. Like I'm going to take Jimmy Graham over like a 6'1" CJ Henderson. I just am. But we didn't see any opportunities for Jimmy. Haven't seen a whole lot of opportunities for Juwan Johnson in the red zone either, another big body guy. Haven't seen a lot of opportunities for Taysom Hill in the red zone. We just talked about running the ball and how that's been a problem for New Orleans. Well, I mean, Taysom Hill's the first player since before bread was sliced, or whatever the stat is, to have 9 receiving touchdowns, 9 rushing touchdowns, and 9 passing touchdowns in a career. Right? I think it was the 60s. I mean, I might have exaggerated that a little bit, but you guys get my point. Is wouldn't you use a guy who's very literally the ultimate red zone weapon in the red zone? Now, with all of that said, to be the devil's advocate part of this, because I think I like to be a little bit more on the positive side, just as a whole, is we often forget when we talk about just football in general. Not even just the Saints. These are people, right? Right? Like there's a big thing in sports where it's like dehumanizing the athletes. And I think sometimes we forget that it's very rare when you find 2 people who just right off the gate chemistry, right? And I think part of it is Derek Carr understanding Pete Carmichael, Pete Carmichael understanding Derek Carr understanding his receivers, Pete Carmichael understanding Derek Carr's understanding of his receiver. There's a big web here. And again, it takes time. If the Saints are still having these red zone issues in week 5, week 6, okay, different conversation. If the Saints come out in week 3 at Lambeau and just absolutely kick ass, all right. We figured it out pretty quick. But I think there is a little bit of an overreaction. There are concerns. Offensive line's a concern. Getting the tight ends involved is a concern for me. Because Jawan Johnson had a really good year last year. Foster Moreau is a guy that can have a big impact, and Jimmy Graham, obviously with his size, could be a big red zone threat. We got to get those guys involved. And then, like Bob said, there's just, with the injuries and the suspensions, running back's a little bit of a concern. But again, it's so early in the season. It's one of those, okay, we can really have these discussions at a deeper thought levels in week 5, in week 6. Because I don't even know who to give credit to, but I've heard this through the time I've worked with you so many times. The first 4 weeks of the NFL season is really just an extension of the preseason. I'm trying to remember who said that.
Alan Arwick says it a lot. That's where I think I get it from, because I said it a lot too.
But that's what it is. So after week 4, we can start hitting panic button about certain things. But from week 1 to week 2, what did we see, Bob, offensively? Progress. So from week 2 to week 3, what do we hope to see? Progress. And from week 3 to week 4, progress. And as long as we continue to see progress, we're fine. And if we haven't seen progress come week 5, week 6, we can have these conversations in a different light.
Yeah, because I tell you, I do. This is what I do like from the Saints offense. Obviously, the receiving trio of Olave, Thomas, and Shaheed. You pointed out the statistics earlier. They are the ones making the big plays to keep drives alive and to put games away. Thomas has been Mike Thomas has been the uppercut and the hook to the body early in the first half. And then the shots to Shaheed and Olave, and the open field plays by both guys in the second half have just been the haymakers and the knockout combinations. But that brings me to my point. And I've seen some criticism of Pete Carmichael too, and I can understand some of it, but Pete is being a whole lot more aggressive, generally speaking, than what we saw from him last year and what we saw from this offense either of the 2 previous years under Sean Payton before that. So I like, as long as you're going to stay aggressive, and we see progress, as you pointed out, then you have to feel that this New Orleans offense is certainly trending in the right direction, even with the injuries in the backfield, even with the issues up front. Carr, I did not think Carr was accurate and sharp at all on Monday night, but he made the plays when they counted the most in the second half, almost a deja vu of the Tennessee game. And I do expect a sharper, crisper Carr going forward. He's got a great chemistry and rapport built up, with the trio of receivers. Now we're just waiting for the same kind of thing to occur with the tight ends, be it Jawan. Foster Moreau had some nice moments early on Monday night, and we're still waiting for Jimmy Graham to get involved. There are weapons everywhere here. So as long as they stay aggressive and not performing the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, like we saw last year. We're seeing some variation. We're seeing a lot of aggressiveness, and that, along with the progress that we saw over the first 2 weeks, I think that those are big feathers in the caps of both Carmichael and Carr.
I do as well. Let's take 5 minutes to talk a little bit Green Bay week 3. We've already talked about the running game going to be a big part of it, and what we can expect out of those running backs, and what are some extremely high expectations. We'll talk a little bit more about that on Friday when we're on PSF. If you guys have not, go ahead and just throw this out there. If you have not downloaded the PSF app yet, please do. And for some of you, I'm looking at you, Anna. I'm looking at you, John Butler. Specifically Jerry G. Some of you guys that are with us every week, we need to name some quote unquote power fans in the PSF app that give you guys moderator rights to be moderators in our chat, and also get some exclusive and fun stuff through PSF. So please, if you have not, go ahead and sign up and just drop your handles for the app in the chat or message us separately on Twitter,
Mhm.
Facebook, or Instagram, because we want to be able to give you guys that type of exclusive
Yes.
access and fun things. So for those of you that are in this chat week in and week out, I know I'm missing some. I'm just seeing the first or the last 5 comments on my screen, but whoever has downloaded, and I see that you already have, just drop your handle or whatever your username is in that app so I can pass that along to the governing powers of the PSF app, and they're going to get you hooked up. Okay, cool. Let's talk about Green Bay. Going to Lambeau in September was not something I expected when the schedule was getting released. I was like, there's no way New Orleans is going before November. It's going to be cold. It's going to be awful. It's going to be terrible. So this is almost a blessing, Bob. This is almost a blessing for
I
this
tell
team.
they got Green Bay in September and New England in October. I honestly thought that when the schedule came out, I honestly thought that someone overthrew in a violent coup attempt, overthrew Roger Goodell, which, by the way, I am obviously all in favor for. But yeah, that was my first thought too. I'm like, no way, this is the Saints' schedule.
Yeah, absolutely not. No, exactly. So the Saints going to Lambeau. I mean, let's think over the last couple trips to Lambeau, or let's think about the ones that come to mind immediately. Saints trips to Lambeau. The Brett Hundley game. Yeah, that's a quarterback name you didn't expect to hear tonight, guys. You dang right. Put that one on your bingo card. I think that game, the Randall Cobb game, is one that I think of too. It's been mixed emotions when the Saints have gone to Lambeau over the years. But the one thing, even the Brett Hundley game, hard-fought game. Regardless of how good or bad those Green Bay teams are, it's always hard fought up there. And there's something about playing in front of those fans up in Lambeau. I mean, it's a historic NFL stadium.
Mm-hmm.
The city of Green Bay owns their team. And week in and week out, they certainly show up to that stadium and they act like it.
Yeah.
Jordan Love era, Green Bay fans. Every 15 years, you're going to go through this, right? You draft a guy. You let him sit for a couple years. They replace a Hall of Fame quarterback. So you're hoping the same thing for Jordan Love, right? Hall of Fame career. You draft his replacement about 10 years from now, and you start the process all over again. I'll be honest with you, Bob. And you and I do the draft coverage together for however many years we have now. When the Jordan Love to New Orleans talk started, there's a lot of people that were not in favor of that at all. And I can't. Okay, so I was going to say, I don't remember what your take was on that. I was all for it. I was a guy that really liked Jordan Love, and I felt like he was a project piece.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the intangibles were there if he was able to sit. So when Green Bay selected him, I thought, dang, this guy. And what's the one thing we talk about quarterbacks and drafts? It's not when you go, it's where you go.
Yeah.
And I thought for Jordan Love, I said, man, that's a perfect spot for him to be able to go ahead and take some years to kind of figure it out. And so that happens, and now you're starting to see what he's got. Obviously, they just took a tough loss to Atlanta, and I know Atlanta's defense has been talked about very highly, and they are a good defense, and I have to give them some credit because I didn't think they'd be worth anything this year defensively. But I also think that says a little bit about Green Bay to lose that game in Atlanta. And that's not discrediting Atlanta's 2-0 start and where their defense is, and how talented Bijan Robinson is, or where Desmond Ridder is in terms of being like 24-0 at home since high school, which is a fun, crazy stat. Yeah, it's a fun, crazy stat, isn't it? Like, has not lost a home game since he was in middle school. So, crazy. But with all that said, Green Bay is a team where there's a lot of question marks, right? New quarterback. When's the last time they've drafted a receiver in the first round? Remember, that was always the joke with Aaron Rodgers. Right. And this is a defense that still has some pieces, but this is not the dominant Green Bay team that we all remember. So, Bob, real quick, about 4 minutes left in the show today. For you, what is the one thing Saints fans, as they prepare and do their research for this week, as they try to learn a little bit about Green Bay, what's one thing about their offense that jumps off the page at you? And what's the one thing about their defense that jumps off the page at you?
I'll go defense first. Green Bay can pressure the passer. They have a very physical front seven, and a very active set of off-ball linebackers in Devondre Campbell and Quay Walker. So that's going to be very challenging for the New Orleans offensive line, their running game, and their short passing game. If the Saints can give Derek Carr a little bit of time, I love the advantage that Thomas, Olave, and Shaheed are going to have against the Saints secondary. Their cornerback, Green Bay Packer quarterback Eric Stokes is going to be out. Yeah, I know everybody loves Jair Alexander, but who else do they got? My point is, I don't think they have enough quality coverage pieces, to stay with the Saints group of pass catchers, not only the receivers, but tight ends. So that's something to keep an eye on if New Orleans can protect Carr. Also the fact that Green Bay has given up 4.5 yards per carry, and an average of 166 yards on the ground. So it might be a shorthanded Saints backfield, but Taysom Hill, looking at you might be in line for a big day. Green Bay's offense. Brandon, this is what I didn't like about Jordan Love coming into the draft, and I haven't changed my mind about him yet. He is not a consistently accurate passer, and he has completed less than 56% of his balls. Yeah, I know their top returning receiver, Christian Watson, has yet to play, and he's dealing with a hamstring that might keep him out again this week. But something else to keep an eye on. Green Bay hasn't been able to protect Love either. He's only been sacked twice, but Atlanta just hit and bullied and hurried him all over the field. On Sunday, especially in the second half. The left side of the Packers line, the left tackle Bakhtiari and the left guard Jenkins, they're still on the injured list, and so keep an eye on their statuses later in the week. By the way, if you're curious, that is usually Carl Granderson's side. If you're looking for a big game from a specific Saints defensive lineman, also dealing with an injury is their rugged running back Aaron Jones. He's 50 at this point in the week. It's 50-50 whether he's going to go or not. They still have AJ Dillon, but Green Bay has only been able to average 88 yards on the ground and less than 3.5 per carry. So again, on paper, looks like a encouraging matchup for the Saints, defensive line and linebackers.
Absolutely, I really like AJ Dillon as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's a big physical runner. So where Aaron Jones is a little bit can catch out of the backfield. You guys know it's the perfect tandem in today's NFL. But Jones might not go. When you talk about Taysom Hill, the only thing I'll say about that, Taysom Hill could be in line for a big day, but remember the team that cut him in the preseason. It was Green Bay. And trust me, athletes don't forget things like that. Even when you land in a perfect spot like Taysom Hill did, with the Sean Payton in mind, I'm sure Taysom Hill will never forget the fact that it was Green Bay that cut him, that, for a slight moment ended his NFL dream. Before he landed in New Orleans. So I could definitely see a Taysom Hill revenge game there. And I'm glad you said that, because though you're going to focus on Tony Jones, who did have 50 yards against the Packers 2 years ago, and you're going to focus on Kendre Miller making his NFL debut, knock on wood, hopefully, Taysom Hill is going to be such a vital piece to that puzzle as well. Guys, we thank you so much for tuning in with us for the Bayou Blitz this Wednesday. Remember, if you want a little bit more of Packers and Saints talk, download the PSF app. Go to the Saints chat. Join the Saints chat. You'll see our stream in there on Friday night. Bob.
And follow Brandon and I. I know it's a new app and we're new on the app, but our follower numbers look pathetic right now.
Yeah, they do. They do. We need to do a better job of also following people, but it is a new app. We're still trying to figure it out. Bob's only had it for a little bit because
1 week.
The Android
less
stuff.
Than 1 week.
1 week. Yeah, because we went live last. Was it last Friday or last Thursday?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
I think it was Friday because I flew back on Thursday. I didn't land until Friday, but Anyway, you guys don't care about my travel plans and my travel schedules. Bob, for the people that don't already follow you online and follow you on the PSF app, where can everybody follow you?
Well, since we're talking about the PSF app, make sure you download that. Like Brendan said, I made it very simple. I'm Bob Rose on there, no spaces. On Facebook, I am Bob Rose with space. I am at Bobby R2613 over on Twitter, and obviously, as we tell you every week, make sure you follow all of our work. I went light the last couple of days because I was down in North Carolina. But make sure you follow us all over at the Saints News Network, at Saints News on Twitter. I'm going to be starting my Saints versus Packers preview tomorrow, a day late for me. But I'm playing a little bit of catch up, so make sure you check those out. I'll be putting out one or two each day through the remainder of the week. And as always, I would be remiss in saying thank you to all you supporters who have beefed up our numbers such a great deal on the Bayou Blitz Facebook page and the Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod. Thank you so much if you're already on there. If you're not, folks, continue to be funneling people that direction. The follow numbers, especially for that Bayou Blitz Facebook page, have just skyrocketed in the last couple of weeks. I love the direction that it's trending. Brendan and I, once we figure out this PSF thing, we're going to start to do a lot more exclusive things through there and the Bayou Blitz Facebook page specifically. So if you're not already a member, please, do so. We stream all of our articles, all of our shows through there as well. If you are already a member, thank you again, and nothing but love for support and supporting your show.
For myself, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, PSF app. Everything's the same. I got really lucky. It's all at BT Boylan. I do want to echo this. I was not able to go out and meet as many people in Charlotte as I hoped to. Life happens. Bob can definitely vouch for me a little bit. Life happens. It proved itself yesterday when we were going out to dinner together. So with all that said, for the people that were able to reach out to me, reach out to Bob, people that are able to link up with Bob, thank you guys for your support. It's been awesome to see this thing grow over the last year and some change for sure.
Yeah, Jason, it was so great to meet you in person. The work you do as a super fan is absolutely awesome. Check out Jason Moorfield, folks. Libby, we're sorry we missed you this time. I can't wait to see pictures of you. You with your new autographed football. Crystal, Chad, Cliff, I just missed you at the game. Folks, not only that game. I'm sorry for that. We'll link up another time. I know the next road game I'll be hitting is Indianapolis, and I'll keep you guys posted when I'll be heading down to New Orleans. We all got to do a better job. Me linking up with you, us, Brendan and I linking up with you, and you guys linking up with us. We'll do a better job of making plans. But we're thankful for the people that we have met. And we're excited for the people that we're going to meet.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks so much again for tuning in, hanging out. Jason, I sent you a photo. I think you already responded to it, but I sent you a photo. USA Today got a really awesome photo of you at that game, so I wanted to send it your way. Sorry I couldn't meet you face-to-face. We'll make it happen some other time. Didn't realize you went to Campbell, the Fighting Camels, all that stuff. Go running Bulldogs. If you ever want to link up at a Big South game, though, please let me know, because you're not that far. We play each other in basketball and in football every year, so we'll try to make it happen. But I digress. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in this Wednesday. We hope to see you on Friday in the PSF app. Remember, that's an open chat too, so we're going to be in there. You guys make yourselves known just like you do here on YouTube, Facebook, all that good stuff. But until Friday on the PSF app, that's Bob Rose. I'm Brendan Boylan. Thanks for tuning in to the Bayou Blitz podcast. Until Friday, find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you then.